Welcome to the Progress Zone podcast, where we help you create real momentum in your mindset, business, health, and life. I'm your host, Jody Donaldson, and every week we'll explore the small, intentional steps that lead to big, lasting growth. This isn't about hype, it's about habits. So let's get started. Progress isn't always about pushing forward. Sometimes progress looks just like getting through each day. And over the last couple of weeks, that's exactly what it's been for me. I've been off for a couple of weeks, and honestly, there was a reason for that. Last week, I lost my father, and everything just slowed way down. Not by choice, just by life happening. The last couple of weeks have been filled with things that don't show up on a calendar. Family, emotions, memories, reflection, and moments that make you realize what actually matters. So I didn't record. I didn't post. I was just present. But coming out of that, I felt like this was a conversation I needed to have. So today, this isn't a typical episode. This is just real life and what it looks like to keep showing up when life hits pause. And that's what the Progress Zone is really about. We talk a lot on this show about growth and discipline and consistency. But what we don't always talk about is what happens when life interrupts all of that. Because it will, no matter how dialed in you are, no matter how focused you are, life has a way of stepping in and reminding you what actually matters. These last 2 weeks weren't about productivity. They weren't about content. They weren't about staying on schedule. They were about being present. One thing that really hit me was how fast everything changes. You go from normal life, normal conversations, to realizing that that was the last time. That was the last conversation. That was the last moment. And you don't know it when it's happening. And that does something to you. It makes you think differently about time, about your priorities, about the things we say we'll get to later, because sometimes later doesn't come. And I want to be clear about something. There wasn't a moment where I was sitting there thinking about the podcast or content or staying consistent. That wasn't even on my mind. What mattered was being there, being present with my father, being present with my family. And I'm grateful for that, because those are moments you don't get back. Because at the end of the day, none of this, business, content, success, means anything if you miss the moments that actually matter. But coming out of it, that's where the reflection started. That's where I began thinking about life and priorities and what progress really looks like. One thing I talk about in the Progress Zone is that progress isn't about perfection. It's about consistency over time. But here's what I've been reminded of in a very real way. Consistency doesn't mean you never stop. It means you come back. That's resilience. That's growth mindset in real life. Not just something we talk about, but something we live. I want you to think about this for a second. Who in your life have you been meaning to call? Who have you been meaning to spend time with? What conversations have you been putting off? Because if there's one thing I've been reminded of, there are no guarantees on later. I used to think progress meant always moving forward, always producing, always building, always doing something. But now I see it a little differently. Sometimes progress is in the pause. Sometimes progress is in the reflection. And sometimes progress is in sitting still long enough to actually feel what life is trying to teach you. So here's what I'm taking from this, and maybe this helps you too. Be present when it matters. Not halfway there, not distracted or on your phone, but be fully there. Don't wait to say what needs to be said. Give people their flowers while they're still here. And give yourself permission to pause without guilt. Because pausing doesn't mean you're falling behind. It just means you're living. This experience didn't stop my progress. It redefined it. And this episode, well, this is me stepping back in. Not perfectly, but intentionally. Because when life hits pause, you don't quit. You reset. I appreciate you being here with me today. If this episode connected with you, take a minute. Please reach out to someone. Be present. Have that conversation you've been putting off, because those moments, they matter more than we think. And don't wait for the right time to show up for the people who matter, because that time isn't guaranteed. And remember, folks, progress isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, taking action, and getting just a little bit better every single day. We'll see you next time inside the Progress Zone. Thanks for joining me in the Progress Zone. If today's episode gave you a spark, share it with a friend, subscribe, or leave a quick review. And remember, progress isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up. I'm Jody Donaldson, and I'll catch you next time inside the Progress Zone.